Hello, our topic is the meaning of the 12th house. I'm going to share with you an extreme case sampling study that investigates what the meaning of the 12th house is. Now, a few preliminary points, and also this is going to be a series of videos because it's going to take longer than a half hour to go through this. Okay, a few preliminary things. One is I use 3 house systems, equal houses. So when we say equal houses, that means equal from the ascendant. I also use midheaven houses. Midheaven houses are equal from the midheaven. The midheaven is still the 10th cusp. And vertex houses, which are equal from the vertex, and the vertex is the 7th cusp. So to make sure this is clear to everyone, just very quickly, because I think most of you are familiar with this, here's a birth chart of a fellow by the name of Alain Deloche. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And let's see, we have Placidus houses selected right now. He has 0 Libra 49 rising. Now, when the rising is near 0 Aries or 0 Libra, an interesting thing happens, which is that the midheaven will be very closely square to the ascendant, and the vertex will be very close to the 7th house cusp. So all 3 points, the ascendant, the vertex, and the midheaven, are very close to being on a cross when you have close to 0 Libra or 0 Aries rising. And this is true even if you're born far from the equator. So Alain Deloche was born in Paris, France, way up near 49 north, and we still have the ascendant at 0 Libra 49, midheaven at 1 Cancer 02, very close but not exactly squared, and the vertex at 1 Aries 58, about 1 degree above the 7th house cusp. We're going to be using this fact in the research that we're going to do. We'll see this in a minute, but there's a reason why I'm emphasizing this. Now, back to the 3 house systems. If I go over here to Settings, House System, and select Equal, well, you know what equal houses are. We have 0 Libra 49 on the ascendant, so 0 Scorpio 49 is on the 2nd, 0 Sag 49, and so on. Right around every house is 30 degrees. If I go to Settings, House System, and I select the Equal from MC, or sometimes I just call this Midheaven Houses for short. Now the midheaven, which is 1 Cancer 02, becomes like this fixed point, and everything is 30 degrees from it. But the midheaven is still the 10th cusp, right? So the midheaven is still the 10th cusp. Now in this case, for Alain Deloche, it makes almost no difference because his ascendant happens to be square his midheaven at 0 Libra 49. And if I do the vertex houses, the vertex will be the 7th cusp at 1 Aries 58, and everything will be equal houses from that point. So I go to House System and select Vertex on 7th cusp, or sometimes I just call these vertex houses, and of course there you go. You have 1 Aries 58, which is the vertex, is the 7th house cusp, and so on right around. So those are the 3 house systems that I use just to demonstrate them. I'm going to put this back to equal houses because it's a more familiar kind of house system. I also suspect, we have some evidence, that the equal house system, equal from the ascendant, you know, what we normally just call equal houses, is in a way usually the primary one, but there are some exceptions to that. We'll get to that later in a future video. But anyway, there are 3 house systems. Okay, back to our PowerPoint. Why do I think there are 3 house systems? Well, there are theoretical reasons for suspecting that there are these 3 house systems, and there are observational reasons. The theoretical reason is this. If you think about what the houses actually are, what is the ascendant? I mean, astronomically in the sky, what actually is the ascendant? Well, it's very interesting that the ascendant point that point in the sky, that's your rising degree, that point, that's the ascendant, is actually extremely similar physically as an astronomical phenomenon, extremely similar to the tropical 0 Aries point, and also extremely similar to the MC point, and also very similar to the vertex point, where you can look at them as an axis. So the ascendant 7th house cusp, the 0 Aries, 0 Libra, the midheaven, the MCIC, and the vertex, anti-vertex, also the moon's nodes, the north node, south node, they're really the same phenomenon. What are they? They are the intersection of two great circles. And one of the great circles is the ecliptic plane. Now, I go through this in more detail in other videos as to what great circles are, etc. So if you're not familiar with this astronomical terminology, don't worry about it. The point right now is just that physically, as a phenomenon in space, they're extremely similar. Well, if they're so similar, and they really are, then maybe, I mean, it's kind of logical, maybe they're working in similar ways. And the tropical signs are exactly 30 degrees, and so maybe houses are also 30 degrees, and maybe any major great circle that intersects the ecliptic plane creates this structure of 12 sections of 30 degrees. It's simple, it's elegant, it's beautiful. Second reason that theoretically we would suspect that these house systems, equal, midheaven, and vertex houses, are real house systems is that they are pure geometric forms in space, created by dimension reduction from the 3 dimensions of a sphere to 2 dimensions of a great circle. I have videos that go into detail on this as well, so I'm not going to try to explain that. That's a whole video in itself, but I'm just summarizing that we have theoretical reasons for understanding how astrology works that are really beautifully elegant ideas, and they suggest that these structures in space, these divisions of the sky into equal 30-degree sections actually exist. And they are the tropical zodiac, the equal houses, equal from the MC, equal from the anti-vertex, and equal from the moon's nodes. Okay, again, I'm just summarizing some ideas that we go into more detail in other videos. That you might say the technical details. And so point number 3, there are these structures in space, which I talk about in other videos, and more specifically, we introduce this idea that there are number sequences embedded in the structures in space. And these number sequences are Fibonacci numbers set into various cycles. They're known as Paisano periods, and prime number structures that actually create the zodiac. The zodiac is actually created by fundamental underlying sacred geometry. That's the idea. And we understand the principles of the sacred geometry in detail. So point number 4, I've already emphasized, conclusion, is that tropical zodiac signs and houses, to put it more bluntly, they're actually the same thing. They're just very slightly different from each other because they're based on a different point on the ecliptic plane. So they're 2 different perspectives, 2 different ways. Well, actually, they're 2 different starting points that create 2 different sets of these structures in space. And then we also have the equal from the midheaven and equal from the anti-vertex. Okay. Now, if you've never heard these ideas before, this may all sound rather abstract and crazy and like, what the heck is he talking about? But I want to review it. You know, if you hear it the first time, then when you go into the videos that explain it in detail, you've heard it, it'll start to make more sense. For those of you already familiar with these ideas, I am reviewing the theoretical reasons why we would suspect that there are equal houses, midheaven houses, and vertex houses. However, theory is not the most important thing. More important than theory is actual observation. You can have all kinds of beautiful theories. what actually works? Well, tropical signs work, and we've confirmed it with our extreme case sampling studies. If you are an astrologer who uses tropical signs, you probably don't feel any need to confirm it. But if you're an astrologer who uses the sidereal zodiac, and maybe you're skeptical that the tropical zodiac has any significant effect, we have researched the tropical zodiac and show that it does have a strong effect. I mean, it's not like a quantitative thing with statistical significance. It's a qualitative study, but nevertheless, it makes a very strong argument that tropical signs work, and we refine exactly what the tropical signs do. Now, okay, so tropical signs work. That's well established. Point number two, when we look at houses, which according to our theory, equal houses from the ascendant, midheaven, and vertex should actually exist, also from the moon's nodes. Well, if the houses were not equal, if there was some kind of quadrant house system, like the Placidus houses or the Regiomontanus houses or Campanus houses, nobody's ever clearly shown where these intermediate cusps are. So if they existed, if Regiomontanus houses cusps existed, there are so many thousands of excellent astrologers, I think it would become clear. When you see a transit over the ascendant or midheaven, oh my God. I mean, we all know that those are really powerful. Maybe not every single time an outer planet crosses an angular cusp, something dramatic happens. But, you know, most of the time, something dramatic does happen. If these other cusps existed, we could look at outer planet transits over them and expect something. I've watched it very carefully in many charts. I really can't see it. Like some upset with second house matters when Uranus crosses the second cusp. So if those cusps existed, you would think we could confirm them a little bit better. Basically what happens is people feel comfortable with it. It feels right to them. But we're not able to get that really solid, clear support in that way. You know, such as, you know, outer planet transits crossing those intermediate cusps. And we do agree, I mean, those, you know, basically all astrologers, at least all Western astrologers, agree that an exact trine to the ascendant is important. So there's no question to almost all of us that if transiting Uranus is trine your ascendant from either, you know, near the fifth cusp or near the ninth cusp, in either case, that's significant. So we already look at those equal house points as being vitally important. We just do not ascribe, we do not give those points the meaning of the cusps, but we give them meaning in terms of the aspect being important. And what I'm suggesting is that when transiting Uranus or Neptune or Pluto or anything else, you know, makes a trine to your ascendant, if it's on that fifth house cusp, using equal houses, look at fifth house issues that come up. And I think it'll probably work. That's a little bit anecdotal, but at least those points are considered to be, you know, we already know they're vitally important. Number 4, planets near the midheaven and near the IC do appear to be in the houses defined by the midheaven IC axis. You know, when you see a planet, suppose Jupiter, is just a little bit away from the midheaven in the ninth house, I think all of us instinctively feel that Jupiter is in the ninth house. I mean, it just works. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's take Elaine Deloche. Let's take some other person sort of randomly. Let me see here. Let me just take. Let's who do we have here? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Oh, she's a good example. American politician. She has 15 degrees Sagittarius rising. Her midheaven is 6 Libra. So, you know, the midheaven's nowhere near being square to the ascendant. Now, when you see that Mercury just a little bit to the right of the midheaven, you know, it's 3 to 4 degrees into the ninth house, it's pretty difficult to not think of Mercury as being in the ninth house. and Sun and Mars as being in the 10th house, or Moon just being a little bit into the 3rd house. Now, people have gotten used to not thinking that way, to using whole sign houses or just equal houses. In my observations, again, this is a little bit, anecdotal, but just personal experience. When that planet is a little bit from the midheaven, it does carry this 9th house flavor pretty clearly to me, and this area 3rd house. So there does seem to be, some dynamic, powerful thing going on with the midheaven axis that distinguishes a 10th house from the 9th house. Well, one easy way, it took me many years to think of this kind of obvious thing in retrospect, is that maybe there's a house system beginning from the ascendant and beginning from the midheaven. So Mercury is in the 9th house. Mars is in the 10th house in the midheaven houses. So it helps kind of resolve this cognitive dissonance that when you're looking at these planets near the midheaven, near the IC, or for example the Sun, it's not that close to the midheaven, but it's clearly a 10th house effect. Her Sun and Mars are in the 10th house, using midheaven houses. So the point is this. You can say, and I do say this is what is implied in what I'm proposing, is that the Sun and Mars are in the 10th house. By what house system? Think about it. What house system? The midheaven houses, equal from the MC. In the ascendant houses, the 11th cusp will be, equal from the ascendant. Well, let's do it. Why imagine? We can select it. Let's select midheaven houses. So now the midheaven has become the equal from the midheaven, Sun and Mars in the 10th. Mercury in the 9th. When we go to the house system equal, now Mars is on the 11th house cusp. It's right on the 11th house cusp, sextile the ascendant. And there's the midheaven over there at 6 Libra. So I hope you can see what I'm saying, is that there's an ascendant house system, there's a midheaven house system, and by using this, we retain the idea that Mercury is in the 9th house. It's in the 9th house relative to the midheaven houses. It's in the 10th house relative to the equal houses. So you have all of these house systems, equal from the ascendant, equal from the midheaven, and equal from the vertex. Now some people might say, well, gee, that's too complicated. Keep it simple. Well, if you familiar with the way I teach, I often say we don't get to decide how nature works. Nature works the way she works. If there are 20 house systems that are all valid, there are 20 house systems. I'm just saying that this evidence is that there are these 3 house systems. They all work a little bit differently. The ascendant, the midheaven, and the vertex houses, and they're all there. And there's the tropical zodiac. And I think there's also a sidereal zodiac, and I also think there's a draconic zodiac. We'll get into that in future videos and how they work. So there are all these divisions of the sky. Okay, so that's the concept. Let's go back to our PowerPoint here. So observational reasons why I think there are these 3 house systems. Point number 2, nobody's clearly shown that the intermediate cusps exist. We agree that those equal points from the ascendant are powerful, or we already know that they're strong points. Planets near the midheaven and near the IC do appear to be in the houses defined by the MC-IC axis. Right? That's what I'm saying. And they are, because there is a midheaven house system. Application of these ideas works. So, I've been using these ideas for, I don't know how many years, over a decade easily, probably 20 years or so. They work, but everybody says their house system works. So that's not very convincing. But obviously, you need to apply the ideas and see if it makes sense. But what do we need with all of everybody having their own opinion about, placidus houses, this, that? There's another reason, for why any quadrant house system doesn't make sense, which is that at extreme latitudes, as you head up to like 67 north or 67 south, the ascendant can be conjunct the midheaven. There are no cusps. So, because of that, it's a strong indication that maybe quadrant houses don't exist, which leaves us basically with equal houses or whole sign houses. And so I'm suggesting there are these house systems. Do whole sign houses exist? They could. Why not? But the main ideas we use in vibrational astrology at this point is equal, midheaven, and vertex houses. If you want to also use whole sign houses, fine, go ahead and do it. There's no law against that. But what we need is extreme case sampling studies like we did with the tropical signs and see what's actually working. So here it is, my friends. This is the first video in what's going to be a lot of videos on the meanings of the houses confirmed with actual data. Okay, now here's what we're going to do, and I've already shown this to you. I want to look at charts that have a huge 12th house emphasis. And what we'll do, let me show you. Let's go back to this guy, Alain Deloche. And yeah, here we go. Using equal houses, he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planets in the 12th house, right? Because the 12th house starts here at 0 Virgo. So from 7 Virgo to 24 Virgo. And notice this. Suppose his birth time is off a little bit. It says he's born at 9:10 a.m. according to his birth certificate. What if he's born at 9:05 or 9:15? Actually near 0 Libra, the cusps are moving very fast. Maybe instead of 1 degree every 4 minutes, about 2 degrees or faster every 4 minutes. But Neptune is 6 degrees above the ascendant. Mercury is about 7 degrees from the 12th house cusp. My point is this. Even if his time is off 5, probably 10 minutes, all of these planets remain in the 12th house. We can do the time adjust, and let's move the chart forward 10 minutes. Let's go 10 minutes forwards. They're still there. All 5 of them. They're still there. In fact, I can probably go another 10 minutes, probably still be there. I don't need to spend a huge amount of time on this. You've got the idea. If I go 10 minutes earlier, they're still there. So Alain Deloche has a huge 12th house. He is super 12th house. And this is our idea of extreme case sampling. And even if his time is off a little bit, he's still huge 12th house. And you know what makes him even stronger 12th house? Is that according to vibrational astrology, which is the system we want to test, they're in the 12th house using midheaven houses. Because the midheaven square the ascendant and vertex houses. Right? I mean, I don't have to switch. I mean, you know what's going to happen. Okay, I'll do it. so I'll go to midheaven houses. You already know what's going to happen. They're still in the 12th house, right? Because the ascendant and midheaven are squared, the vertex is right on, within 1 degree of 7th cusp. He has, let me just put this back to equal, since that's our usual thing we select, equal houses. He has, Alain Deloche, has 5 planets, including the sun and moon, 2 most important things in a way, and 2 inner planets, Mercury, Mars, 1 outer planet, Neptune, in the 12th house with all 3 house systems, equal, midheaven, and vertex. He is the most extreme 12th house person. So what I decided to do in this study was to find out who has the most planets in the 12th house, and that it would be true for all 3 house systems. So there's a consistent 12th house emphasis using equal, midheaven, and vertex to make it very, very clear. It's not the only way to do the research. Later on, after we finish the study of all 12 houses, then we're going to do tests of what happens when there's a 12th house equal emphasis and an 11th house midheaven emphasis. we'll look at different combinations. You know, there's a lot of combinations, so this research could go on for a long time. But for the first level of the study, you know, we're just going to see what a huge emphasis in a house means, and we're not going to get into the details of distinguishing midheaven, vertex, and ascendant houses. We'll do that later in future videos. Let's first just see if somebody who has a huge 12th house emphasis, and you know, I'm going to show you the data, but what we're going to find out is that Elaine Deloche is the #1 person of over 20,000 people with AA data with a clear 12th house huge emphasis. Okay, so you got the idea? There's many strategies. This is not the only strategy and not necessarily the best strategy. There's no way to tell what's the best. You just want to come up with a good, reasonable idea that fits what you want to know. And what I want to know is if someone has a huge number of planets in the 12th house by all 3 house systems, they have to have some kind of 12th house emphasis in their lives. And, you know, I want to see what that is. So that's the research design. And the way I did the research to confirm this is I put near 0 Aries or near 0 Libra on the ascendant. So what the research is, let's go back and look at this. We create this research Astro Signature, and we're going to say, I want the people who have near 0 Libra or 0 Aries rising. Why only those risings? Because that will keep the vertex near the 7th cusp and the midheaven near the 10th cusp. They're all going to be like on this cross. And it means that the house system will work. The planets will be in this house according to all 3 houses. And I don't want a planet within 5 degrees of the ascendant or 5 degrees of the equal house 12th cusp. I want it off at least 5 degrees. So I want it in the middle 20 degrees of the 12th house. Just so that if the time is a little bit off, I know that they're there. The idea is this. It's not that important in this kind of research that you get the most powerful 12th house. What's important is that you get a very strong 12th house and there's almost no doubt about it. Because if you're doubting it, oh, what if the time was different? You know, it's just unclear. It's hard to, we want to get some clear conclusions. What we know is that Elaine Deloche, I mean, as much as we can know anything, he has huge 12th house, because even if his time is off a little bit, we looked at it 10 minutes off in his case, still the 5 planets are there, and they're there with all 3 house systems. So we're safe. We know he's strong 12th house. Maybe if we didn't make the 5-degree orb, you know, we allowed planets to be closer to the ascendant and so on, we would find somebody else who's even stronger. But then we have to worry about what if the time was off a few minutes. So we're safe that he is a strong 12th house. Again, there's no one perfect way to do research. You just come up with an idea that fits the way that you're thinking about it. So again, what I did is let's pull this up again. I'm looking for a chart with near 0 Aries or near 0 Libra rising, and the planets are 5 to 25 degrees above the ascendant, right? 5 to 25 degrees, that 20-degree area close to the middle of the 12th house, using all 3 house systems. And what I ended up doing is, let's see if I mention it here on the next video, next slide. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so the previous slide, I've already mentioned this. We're not distinguishing between 3 different houses. We'll do that in the future. We just want to see the basic idea of 12th house. It's going to be a little bit different. 12th house with midheaven and vertex houses are slightly different, but they all share something in common. You know, they're very similar. So let's see. It should really stand out for Elaine Deloche and the other super 12th house people. And what I did is I used the 3 degrees. It's kind of arbitrary. You know, you could use 2 degrees, 4 degrees, whatever. But I said if 27 Pisces to 3 Aries is rising, this is my Astro Signature. I'm going to select people that only have 27 Pisces to 3 Aries rising, or the opposite, 27 Virgo to 27 Virgo to 3 Libra, and the planet is between 25 degrees and 5 degrees above the ascendant, and I use this point system. I gave 5 points to Sun and Moon, 3 points to Mercury, Venus, and Mars, 2 points to Jupiter and Saturn, 1 point to Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. You know, if you think Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto in the 12th house is just as important as Sun in the 12th house, you can redo the research and give them all 1 point, or however many points. So, you know, there are variations that are reasonable as well. No matter what variation you use, no matter what points you assign, even if you just assign 1 point to all of them, you're going to find people that have a strong 12th house emphasis. And that's all that's important. So we all agree, nobody doubts that Alain Deloche has a strong 12th house, you know, using the basic ideas that I've presented. He has a strong 12th house. Now, I'm not taking into account whole sign houses. That would be a completely different research. I'm just testing the idea of these 3 house systems, equal, midheaven, and vertex. With all those 3 house systems, he has a huge 12th house. I'm also not using rulers or other kinds of, you know, ideas. You know, what house the ruler of the cusp is in and all that. You know, the research design variations can go on forever. All we want is something reasonable. This is reasonable. This will work. Okay. And again, if you use 1 point instead of different points, you'll get slightly different results, but not hugely different. If you have a lot of planets in 12th house, you have a lot of planets in 12th house. And this is what the Astro Signature looks like. So if you want to do this research, this is what it looks like. These are the lines I added. I made an Astro Signature in the series software, and I said if the ascendant is 0 Aries to 3 Aries, give it 50 points. You do that by selecting degrees dignity in this feature for creating Astro Signature, and then you select a section, how many sections in each sign. I said 10 sections, and it's the first one, and it'll confirm to you, yes, we're talking about 0 to 3 Aries. And for these others, it'll still be 10 sections, and it's just a different section number from 1 to 120. So anyway, you just fill this out, and for the way I did the planet is as an aspect. So a waxing ascendant sun aspect with an orb of 10 degrees. So I did it as a 15-degree aspect with a 10-degree orb. And here's my 5 points for Sun and Moon, 3 for the inner planets, 2 for Jupiter and Saturn, and 1 for Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So it's 15 degrees waxing aspect of the ascendant to the planet with a 10-degree orb. That puts the planet between 5 and 25 degrees. Let me show it to you in the program. I think I have it in what I'm running here. I hope so. If I go to Astro Signature and I go down to well, I might just have to show this in, I think it's this one, Planet and House. Let me see. No, that's not it. So I can show it in the next video. I think I have it saved somewhere else. I have a few different programs I've installed for different things. Yeah, I'll show it in the next video because we are at 34 minutes. I only like to go about a half hour. In the next video, I will pick up with showing you this Astro Signature for planets in its sign, just to show you what it looks like in a little bit more detail. And then let's see where we're going next. So we'll finish up this thing about the how that Astro Signature is created. I'll show you a little bit more about that in the next video in this series. And then here are the people. Just a preview to what we're going to be doing in the next video in this series. Here are the people who are the super 12th house people. And then we go into it. There he is, Alain Deloche, and we start describing who he is, what's going on, what the planets are, and what the 12th house means, what these people Here's the list again. The ones in bold are the ones we have biographical information for. The ones in gray, we don't have much information about them. So it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people that are the primary ones. We'll mention a little bit about these people we don't have much biography for. But we want to find out what these super 12th house people, the big 5 who score 61 or higher, everybody else is lower than 61. These top 5 people that we have a lot of biographical information for, and we're going to make a very strong argument for exactly what the 12th house does that fits these 5 people. And if you have other ideas about what the 12th house means, and you accept this idea of testing the equal, the midheaven, the vertex houses, if you want to do your own research with different houses, of course you can do it. But this is how we can confirm that our ideas work. Because if these super people, if Elaine Deloche doesn't express what we expect of the 12th house, our idea of the 12th house is wrong. That's the idea of this evidence-based approach. Our ideas have to fit the data. Okay, so we will pick up in the next video, talk a little bit more about the details of this Astro Signature in case you want to create it yourself or some variation of it. And you want to conduct the research, you could conduct it with a different house system, whatever you want to do. Okay, we will pick up with this in the next video, and we'll start looking at the results. This is very exciting because we've put off this research on the meanings of houses for so long, and finally we're doing it. Finally, we're going to confirm, more rigorously if our ideas about the houses make sense. To me, it's exciting to finally get around to confirming this. Okay, my friends, that's all for now. I'll see you in the next video in the series. God bless. Namaste.